My name is Claudio Acioly and I'm the head of training and capacity building of UN Habitat. Before that, during 5 years, I was the coordinator of the UN Housing Rights Program and head of the housing policy and slum upgrading of UN Habitat. Housing lies very close to my heart and in my professional experience. In this very brief session, I'm going to speak to you about the challenges of maintenance and management of the high-rise multifamily housing and elaborate a bit what are the possibilities that we have to establish a sustainable maintenance and management of the housing stock where in some countries the majority of the population lives. So the fundamental question is, why is it that communal space and communal property suffer from severe neglect and abandonment? From these images that I'm showing you here, you will see that facades, staircase, properties that are well located are suffering from dilapidation and abandonment, bringing risk not only for those inhabitants occupying those properties, but also those who live in the surrounding. So we see all over the places, not only in Central and Eastern European countries, but in many places of the world where policies have opted to create high-rise housing solutions without taking care how these properties can be maintained. What are the rules of engagement that inhabitants, homeowners, as well as tenants should engage and respect in order to make sure that common properties and common spaces are well kept and maintained? And there are many reasons. So what is that property owners can do on their own in terms of their responsibilities, and what is that they need government support or policy support? Something related to the pipelines, to the facades, to the roofs, to the foundations, so to the lifts. So there are areas where residents cannot do it on their own. They need mechanisms, systems in place, policy support, finance, organization to make it work. So what are the individual responsibilities and what are the collective responsibilities? And these things need to be very well arranged, either by law, by mechanisms to enforce the law, by creating encouragements, by creating incentives so that residents actually will invest their time and resources on maintaining what belongs to everybody, which has not only a collective interest, but a direct individual benefit, because a well-kept property will have a very high price in the housing market. So if we think about what is the scale of this problem, well, in 2006, the Netherlands government has sponsored a research in the Eastern European part, and many countries were part of this research, and they found a situation of underinvestment and under-maintenance, with a backlog of 400 billion euro, which would take between 40 and 100 years under the current tempo of refurbishment to bring this housing stock to the level that is found in terms of habitability in Western European countries. So it's very nice, this drawing that shows, well, the high-rise housing needs help. And how can we help? Through policies, through organization, through legislation, through projects and programs. So there are countries and cities that are in bad needs for support to bring this housing stock to the level of habitability. So the quick question is, how can we organize repair and maintenance in the high-rise multifamily housing stock? How can we establish practical, financial, organizational arrangements that will ensure that residents fulfill their individual responsibilities for repair and maintenance, and that we have that in a sustainable manner? So let me very quickly look at what are the elements that we're talking about, the key technical elements. Well, the common properties, the networks, the facade, the structure wall, roof, foundations, basement. We have the surrounding land. We have the elevators and lifts, the entrances, where people become co-owners. Now, every owner then has the right to have a saying in decisions and that affect the maintenance or choices of technology or solutions and the costs associated with that, whether one agrees or not. So the issue about living in a multifamily is that whether I agree or not as a resident, decisions are binding. So the problem has three legs: policy, finance, and management. And then we need to look at these dimensions, because then we will look at what kind of policies we need, what kind of financial arrangements we have, and what kind of organizational systems we have in order to put not only regulations, but also finance and define what kind of government support is needed. So we have an experience, for example, when these things are not in place, like in Bulgaria, where the legislation did not make it compulsory for residents to become members of a homeowners association or condominium association, which means that when a law was issued allowing property owners to have finance to refurbish their property with energy efficiency measures, every individual went to the bank and they started refurbishing their own individual flats and not in a collective manner. So the buildings became really complicated, because some buildings were had 2 or 3 apartments refurbished, while others had none. So you need to organize that collectively. So going back to countries that established this, you have a variety of solutions. For example, in Chile, the municipality of Santiago decided to anticipate and create a program to recruit a manager of these housing estates in order to enable inhabitants to organize their fee payment, their building of their reserve, and the organization cleanness of the collective space. In Brazil, for example, the government in their national housing policy opted to train the inhabitants for living in a high-rise multifamily housing. How is the change in culture when you start sharing property, garbage collection, cleanness, security, use of the common space, stairs, corridors, and so on. Now in Singapore it's very interesting because it's centrally organized. So all the housing, the neighborhoods, they have a central organization where people, when they buy, they contribute to a fund and they pay for the regular maintenance and cleanness regularly to this central organization. In South Korea, it's organized in the same way. It's a central organization located in the neighborhood where they collect and maintain the fees and supervise the payment and supervise the state of repair of the neighborhoods and the building stock. So there is a variety of solutions. I'm just mentioning a few where I have recently worked, where these things are arranged in different ways. But one important element is the capacity to enforce law and the ability of, let's say, governments to actually provide the mechanisms and the encouragement for the housing stock to be maintained in a decentralized manner by the occupants and owners of these inhabitants. So in the end, what we're talking about is what kind of support that governments need to put in place, and what are the stimulus that we can have for residents to assembling themselves together, mobilize. So the problem becomes not only technical but social, and that we need to be aware of that. We need to really be aware that the problem is not only technical, managerial, or financial, or technical. The problem is also social, which means how do we reach out to owners and occupants of these buildings that they do what is expected for them to do in a multifamily high-rise environment. To end my story, what I would like to say some about the trends. So we observe, let's say, 5 trends. The first one is that more and more apartment owners are having a say in the management and organization of the maintenance of their buildings. More responsibilities are being introduced either to condominium or to homeowners association and to inhabitants themselves according to different mechanisms. For example, whether you have a large apartment or a small apartment, you will have a certain contribution that is related to the space that you occupy in the overall building. More and more initiatives to push residents to be actively involved in the management of the common properties, and then more and more boundaries being defined between collective and individual responsibilities and regulations that enforce that. And finally, legal provisions, so different legal initiatives to enforce membership, but also commitment of individual owners to property and maintenance. So with that, I would like to finish that this is a very common, it's not a regional, it's not a national, it's a global issue, because more and more we see compact cities, more and more high-rise housing of different types and different conditions in different contexts, and we need to take care so that we don't create a problem for the near future. Thank you.